Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Ascended World podcast and Energy Share. And this is Angela Coulter. And
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
so, yeah, we were just talking offline. And so, what you were saying, I think, is a good start. So, do you want to repeat that?
Through some self-work over the weekend, I was finding that one of the main ways that I propel myself through everything, it was emotions. And that in resolving them, I don't even know the right word for it, they no longer hold the same pattern for me. And I am feeling almost flat or ambivalent about everything. And it's a question of, okay, now that I've resolved that need to propel myself through my emotions, what now? How do I move forward, move at all?
Yeah. And that was a good continuation for what we talked about last week, right? I think it was. I can't remember.
I was looking, we talked about self-observation, self-work, self-support, self-awareness, and shifting through that.
Right. And that propulsion-based existence, yeah.
Right.
Such a deeply embedded habit for us.
Well, it's like we're in that, what is that? Always in a defensive mode, reactive mode.
Right.
That we don't really do anything unless it's in response to something else.
Right. Isn't that funny? And then we feel, because we're so used to being driven by motivation, right, which is another word for lack-based, propulsion or whatever.
Right.
That, yeah. So,
well, and if you look at it, that's our whole economy.
Oh, right.
And if you're facing financial, obstacles, whatever you want to call them, opportunities, it's like that's need versus abundance. That's again very defensive or reactive process.
Right. Well, just think about even day to day how we schedule our day, right?
Yeah.
And how we tend to prioritize instead of coming to prioritization as to what does my bliss tell me to do, right? Which is very little of what we end up doing, right? We then think what we think.
Yeah, right.
I need to do this, right? So a really basic example when you're talking about that comes to me, which is, we had the snow thing yesterday. And knowing that, North Carolina just shuts down in the face of any kind of precipitation. It was like this rush of getting everything done on Saturday, knowing that, that was coming on Sunday.
Right.
So that's the same kind of energy, right? Because you're going, oh, I've got to do this and I've got to prioritize this because I might not be able to get my car out of the driveway.
Right.
Everything might be closed. And that sounds like a really simple, mundane example, but it's really why it's so embedded in us, is that's how we schedule our days.
Right. Or what even worse is it's scheduled by something that doesn't even really exist, time.
Right. Right. Yeah. So then we translate that to all the what ifs, all the lack, right?
Yeah.
All the stuff like we were talking about last week that propels us. So then I guess maybe the next question is maybe that's where you got to, because I don't know, I don't even remember what our session was about at the end of the session last week.
Right.
But
one of the things I've written down at the very beginning was settling for just enough.
Right.
And maybe this feels true for me, is that settling for just enough to satisfy whatever that propulsion is at the moment.
Yep.
So whether it's fear or whether it's anxiety or whether it's tension, physical discomfort, is settling just enough for that to release.
Yep.
So then the propulsion goes away, which brings us smack dab to where we were last week, which is being proactive and working ahead anyway.
Because when we get into that place that our bliss drives us versus
right.
Then it doesn't matter. Then everything else becomes secondary. What was really interesting. So, do you watch the Mrs. Maisel, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel? Have you watched that at all?
You know, I tried to watch the first episode, but it was so much like a musical. I was like, yeah, I'm out. So I didn't watch anymore, but my daughter was like, it's not a musical. You need to watch this.
It's not a musical. I'm like thinking, a musical? Really?
It was the wedding. It was the wedding. It was like they kept breaking out and singing all the time. And I was just like,
oh, yeah, no, they don't do that in any of the other ones.
Well, maybe I should watch another one. Because she asked me over the weekend if I wanted to watch it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do musicals.
No, it's not a musical. You know, the thing that I love, not at all. That's really interesting. I don't even remember the musical stuff going on at the wedding. Huh. Well, we finished the second season this weekend. So anybody watching or listening, I hope to not really get spoilers in, but you know how it's going anyway. But the thing that I really love about this story is that this woman in the late 1950s, finds her bliss, like finds what it is that totally drives her, that just jazzes her like beyond belief, and everything else is but like a shadow, right, in her life. And she enjoys her life. Like there's nothing wrong with her life. I mean, she's a very, well-to-do, very well taken care of and all that kind of stuff. And that's, I think, part of what's even more beautiful about it is because, a lot of times we see people who become, the whole story is about her becoming a comedian, right? And
right.
So the whole thing is about, a lot of stories that we do are about, oh, I had nothing and against all odds, I did this or whatever. But they start this story in a completely different place where she does have everything. She doesn't need anything.
Right.
She's got a well-to-do family. She's got a well-to-do life. She's got a fabulous husband who completely adores her, right? And a life that she enjoys. But when she hits on what her bliss is, all of a sudden, everything else sort of grades out in her life.
Mm.
And then she changes her so the whole series is about her changing her focus against all odds, against cultural expectations, against what people even would allow women to do in the 50s, right?
Right.
To a place where everything else but what that primary thing is that drives her, that, getting on stage and doing her comedic bits, everything else becomes secondary. And the second season is all about that, and it shows her drive and commitment because that's all she wants to do.
Right.
Right. And in the 50s and late 50s, early 60s, what were women supposed to do? Get married, have kids,
Be a homemaker.
Yeah, be a homemaker. And, and even if you did something outside of the house, that was secondary to what you did in the house and took care of the kids in the house and the husband and all that kind of stuff. And so it's her ignoring all of that to say, I am going to be me, and that's my priority. That's, to me, what I love about the show. Well, besides she's hysterical and funny, and they do it so well, and the actors in the show are just a tremendously awesome cast. The guy who's her dad is the guy who's playing Monk, and he does a fabulous. I mean, he's a great actor. So, but anyhow, so I highly recommend it because of that, because it really talks about once we hit that bliss, right? Mm-hmm. Everything else becomes a lower priority.
Well, and maybe that explains what happened over the weekend and end of last week, because I switched my focus from, oh my God, how am I ever going to be able to afford Christmas this year, to, okay, what do I already have that I can channel into that and got more involved in creating things from my place of bliss to repurpose that for Christmas gifts. And that's where I put most of my energy. And that's when I felt that shift away from that emotional propulsion.
And it feels uncomfortable because then we're like, well, this isn't right. Like, you know, like,
well, it's like something's missing.
Yeah.
Because it took up so much space. It almost feels like physical space.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, what goes there now? You know, and in the process of all this, I've been, you know, for so long, I've had so much furniture in my house between what I had, what Frank had, then my parents, and then anything anybody didn't want. And it just was like, I got rid of the last set of mattresses and an extra kitchen table yesterday. And it's like, oh, and the transport wheelchair that was.
Oh, finally.
Yep. Yesterday.
Yay.
And I'm just like, it's like this physical space is freed up. And it's like, oh my God, there's breathing room. That's a good term for it, even in my house. And it's like, I've already been through my closet.
Yeah. I'm ready to do closets. I have the closets downstairs because everything upstairs got cleaned out earlier.
Yeah. And I'm, extra comforters and blankets. And it's like, I live in Texas. You might need one blanket to get you through, but you don't need a down comforter, a blanket, an electric blanket, all these things. And it's like, but I had them.
You never know. Yeah, that Arctic freeze.
I know. So that's probably what is explaining this. So I guess the question is, not the question, I guess the getting comfortable with that and aligning with that and allowing that feels good, but hesitantly good because it's different.
Right. And you're not used to the space of energy that it allows you, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're constantly driven of, oh, I've got to, talking about the stuff, doing the stuff on Saturday to get done before Sunday, it's like, oh, I've got to do this, and you're driven with that deadline, right?
And it becomes it's like riding on autopilot.
It is so much of what we exist in every day.
Right.
And I was really conscious of that, but it's funny, and I think I was even more conscious of that because for me last week, what kept on coming up, is in looking into next year and what I want to do with, what I do next year, was prioritize, and that's exactly what I got, was prioritize based on what your heart takes you to do, not what you think you should be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's weird because when I do that, and I'm like, okay, well, these are the, 5 things that I want to do next year, right? There's a part of me that wants to fill in all these other blanks going, but that's it, just those 5 things. But those are 5 pretty big things. And they would, if I allow myself to focus on them, it would take up the whole year easily, right?
Wow.
But we're so used to saying, oh no, because I have all these other little things, and oh, what about this? And I've got to keep this up. And if I don't do this, what's going to happen? That's the lack, right?
Right.
I don't do this.
Right.
And it's like, well,
it's like, what happens if I don't worry about this?
Right. Right? Totally.
Oh my God, it might go away on its own.
So, yeah, and it's funny because when I sit there and I look at the list, which are all big, like I said, all 5 of them are big things. I'm like, okay. And then the mind wants to go, but what about this? What about this? And then just and it feels so uncomfortable to say, nope, I'm just going to focus on this. But in the same respect, it's the same thing that you're saying is hesitantly happy, right? Hesitantly energized by it because it's like, well, if I allow myself for it to be that easy, right? Because it does make it all that much easier. Because if something on the list comes up and it gets done, great. And if it doesn't, it wasn't on the list, on the priority list anyway. It's not what the heart's driving me to do.
Well, and if you look at, I was relying so much on the externalization of those emotions to energize me, to motivate me. And when you take that away, it's like, okay, now where does that come from? Well, it comes from within, which is where it should have, I don't want to use the word should, where it naturally comes anyway. You were just ignoring it.
Yes. And that was actually a good choice, because naturally is really the case. It's
Right.
And so much energy overriding what's natural.
Right.
That's another thing of like, it was funny as I also saw a post this morning by someone, one of the training practitioners, who was talking about how it's so funny how, you know, by nature and how we have built ourselves into this reality, right? This world is, this time of year is a natural tendency of like cocooning, right?
Right.
And allowing ourselves to process, allowing ourselves some space, slowing down a little bit. And yet, isn't it ironic that we push ourselves to be so much busier right now because of the holiday season and all this other stuff, and then everybody ends up, so many people, not everybody, so many people get so overstressed during the holiday season because of what? Oh, I've got to go to this party, I've got to go and do this, I've got to get these gifts, you know, like you're saying, is like, well, what can I just use with what comes from me? And that's a much more pure gift anyway, you know?
Right. Right.
So it was funny as I saw it this morning, and it's shifting our place to, and the way I look at it when you're saying that, well, you know, we overstress ourselves. It's another, I've got to get this done by this, another deadline. I've got to get Christmas presents by this date. I've got to get Christmas cards out by this date. I've got to do this. And if I got to get Christmas cards out, I got to get pictures taken, and, you know, like, and there's all of this stuff.
Right.
And so I will say that years ago, I stopped even doing obligatory gifts because they just didn't resonate with me.
Right.
And so many of us, because there was one point where it got so incredibly crazy, I was spending thousands of dollars on Christmas gifts for people I never saw, that were not a part of my life, but only because they were just like a relation of some kind, or that I should get them, you know, like, or they just continuously got us gifts, and we just felt like we had to reciprocate.
Right.
And finally, I just said, you know, if I want to give you a gift, I'm going to give you a gift. And if I don't want to give you a gift, I'm not going to give you a gift.
Yeah.
And if, you know, it's funny, as I was talking to somebody like, oh, well, so-and-so did this. And I'm just like, so when that happens, I just say, thank you.
Yeah.
With true gratitude. Thank you for thinking of me and everything else. I said, because at the end of the day, what if we just really started valuing our connection more than things, you know, that we give, you know. And it's not that we don't have to do, like I do, like I'll get motivated to just get something. I was like, oh, or this, but I do that all the time now. It's like, oh, this makes me think of this person. I want to get this, I'll just get that for them because somehow energetically it connects me, you know, connects
right.
to them. And I just do it. But I do that all the time. It's not just Christmas, you know. But at Christmas time, we get all like stuck, and then we get stuck in all these shoulds and lists, and you know what we have to do, and who should we send Christmas cards to, and or holiday cards to, and all that kind of stuff. So maybe, okay, well, I mean, I guess that could easily be what we do today. Is just that.
Well, it's almost, the way I see it is that you know, we create all these connections, for just lack of a better word, to however we've become accustomed to propulsion. And if we resolve the need for that, and then return to the internalization of that motivation, propulsion, whatever you want to call it, those connections are almost like, what do I do now? What do I do now? And it becomes a feeling of being lost. And if it's just a question of reassigning those connections, or just almost like cleanup.
Yes. Well, and it just feels, when we do stuff motivated truly just from our heart,
Well, it comes from such a different place.
and then it's so much easier because then we don't have egoic conditions around it.
Right. And that the attachment is there is no attachment because it's all from within.
Right. Right. Well, that's it. And that's part of like what I see. And what's awesome is to see a lot of programs out there. Like, I love what Andrea is doing.
Oh, I know. The bracelets.
I just love reading her posts every day. And I think that's, I mean, and there's so many more people, more of us doing those kind of things. But I just think it's a really fabulous, like, we're starting to know how, and like when we used to Pay It Forward, I think Pay It Forward was one of the best movies ever, you know. And if you haven't watched it and you're listening or watching, then go and watch it because it's awesome. And that's sort of started the whole thought of the pay. I would say it started that whole pay it forward kind of movement. But look at how, and every time, oh God, there's so many things that are just like downloading right now. I can't keep up to it. It's like, there, we open the floodgates. Every time we allow things to come from the heart, every time we do things from our bliss, from our joy, true bliss and joy, not because we feel like it's going to make us a better person by doing something for somebody else, but really because that's an egoic condition, right? They'll think I'm a great person, or people will think I'm a great person by doing this. If I do it, is an egoic condition versus just saying, "Ooh, I just want to do this."
Right.
Feels good to me. This feels good right now, and I'm in a place where I love myself so much that I want to share it with you in showing love to you, and whatever that is, right? And whatever paying forward it is, or whatever gratitude or gift or whatever. That's a completely different energy and so much easier for us.
Well, and what I found is anytime I would project out doing something out of the ordinary, it was always through the filter of, well, what will other people think? And that's when you get that fear factor built into stepping out of your comfort zone. Whereas if it all comes from within, you don't have that external filter you're judging your actions against. And of course you'll do it because it's what you want to do. So there's none of that fear or anxiety or, gosh, should I really do that? What will people think? It's just so much more genuine.
Well, and it always, what I find, the thought of kind of, and that's actually what was sort of behind the whole Pay It Forward, that movie, right, too, is energetically, and I found this, and I'm sure, I know you have too, is like, when we come from the heart that way, it's really interesting how synchronistic things and magical things become, right? Because it's sort of like a reflection back from the universe, right? So if you come from the heart and just give from that place of I'm exuding my love, right? And it doesn't have to be giving anything like money or whatever. It's, whatever. You're just somehow sharing it. It reflects back to you like tenfold, right? So then synchronistic things begin to happen. Things just fall together. And I just find that just holds us in that's a much better vibration to hold ourselves in and motivate ourselves from, instead of saying, oh, what do I have to do? It's what feels awesome for me to do today. Like, think of it like that, just saying that feels so much better to say, so what feels great for me to do today?
Right. And, and it's not just an external feel, it's an internal feel too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when people say things like, oh, like I've heard like, oh, I just want to stay home. Excuse me, I just want to stay home under the covers and whatever. So that's great, but the question is, what's the motivation of that? Because you want to avoid what? You feel like it's an obligation to do what? To interact with
Right.
people, to do this or whatever. When you say, I'm just going to stay home and hang out in sweats and, you know, nap all day, and it's just because for your own nourishment, because you're like, you know, because I just feel like it's time for me to nourish myself that way.
Right. Right.
That's a completely different energy.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I had a day like that last week, and it was just like, you know what? I need to honor this level of fatigue. I need to do this. And I did not judge myself at all. In fact, I loved it. And it was so nourishing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is when we allow it to be nourishing without then. So when you do it, then commit to it and don't sit there and go, oh, I should be doing this,
Right,
or
right.
oh, well, God, it's just going to be hell because I'm going to have all this stuff because I'm not doing it. And it's like, well, see, that's a propulsion, right? That's a motivation thing or demotivator or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But if you do it, own it. That's the bit,
Right.
own it. Yup. Like it was funny because so we really didn't have much of a choice but to just be home yesterday, which I was glad to be able to do. And it was funny because my daughter was in and out. Did she go out yesterday? She did in the afternoon. She went over to her boyfriend's house for a little while. And then she came back and she's like, so what did you do? And I'm like,
This is it. Doing it.
I meditated. I took a
Yeah.
nap. I was like, I put a roast in.
Yeah.
And we started a fire in the fireplace. That was it. And it was really nice and cozy taking a little nap on the couch,
Yeah.
with the fire going. So, and I thought of nothing. That was the awesome part is I thought of nothing. I just was present and whatever came to mind came to mind, but I wasn't worried. Oh, excuse me, there's the yawn. I wasn't thinking about what I was gonna have to do today, what I was gonna have to do this week, what I wasn't doing, blah blah blah. Nope, it was just enjoy the beautiful snow. Oh, I just got up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and what was amazing, was the snow coming down, and it was a big fluffy snow, so that we had that blanket. And to me, in the early morning, when you have an early morning like that, when you have this blanket of snow, everything seems even quieter.
Oh, yeah, it really
Because
does.
you get that, it's like that blanket, and it's like buffered and muffled, and
Well, and it's like you can almost hear the snow falling. It's that.
yes, and it's
Yeah.
so peaceful. And I just sat there at like 7 for a little while and just felt that, and was completely present with that, and that was really cool. Of course, it was funny later on. My husband's like, "I can't believe you didn't wake me up to sit in that and look." I was like, I got up on my own. so,
Right. Yeah.
so, yeah. So being present with that, and so maybe that's part of the message too. So maybe what we do today is, I am worthy to remember how to and allow myself to prioritize based on my passion and my bliss, and from a presence, and I'm motivated from a presence of love
Right. And I allow that to integrate
easily.
easily, completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because your mind always wants to go, okay, but only for this part or only for this part. It's like, nope, everything.
Yeah. And I allow that to be what I allow that to be my life
Naturally.
naturally. Oh, that feels so good.
It really does.
Oof, okay. I'm glad we got to that. Are you ready?
I am.
All right. Wow.
Yeah, I could have stayed all day.
I just opened my eyes and I didn't realize how long we were going for. Like, oh, I could have stayed out there all day because so much started to shift. It was huge. And at the end, so at the beginning, I was sort of seeing certain, it was almost like I was seeing certain things, not just for me, but for all of us, like a leaderboard thing, right? It was like all these things just started shifting in terms of like how they were listed and priority, and it was like everything just fell off, and I was like watching that, and then all of a sudden something just started rewiring in me, like completely energetically. That was awesome, and I was like, ooh,
Yeah, I felt like I had new circuits installed.
yes, it was so nice. I was like, ooh, that feels good.
Yep.
And then at the end, I saw this big portal, or well, for lack of a better word, it looked like a big portal, but it was almost like a portal, but it was almost like a big, I don't want to say a pot, but it was like everything that was not driven from this other place just started going in and just melting into the wholeness again. So it was like not even, it wasn't even energy to create it anymore. It just was part of the whole. And I was like, oh, that feels so good. I was watching it and I was like, oh. And then it was just like, okay, probably want to go back. And I was like, wow, it was a little longer than I thought it was.
Yeah. I felt like I was melting into a new mold.
Nice.
Yeah. Really, really good.
Oh, yeah, that was an unexpected. Well, it's always unexpected because we always start out not knowing what we're going to talk about today, but oh, that feels so good. I'm actually going to write this down in my notes so that I don't
Yeah,
forget.
I was just sitting here trying to remember what it was we went into, but
It was like setting ourselves to be motivated from, worthy to remember how to allow ourselves to be deprioritized from bliss, from love, from the heart. And I can't remember the rest of it. I'm probably have to go back and listen to
I
it.
know that completely and naturally were something that we
I
added.
remember that, yeah, and easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm writing this down. Because I know what'll happen is tomorrow I'll go into meditation and go to write it in my journal and I'll be like, what was that again?
I know. I know.
Oh, there's the yawn. Oh. Wow. And what a great time for this to be a focus for us. Like,
I know. It really is.
well, thank you. And thank everybody for joining us. And we will see you guys next week. And wherever the next one will take us. Hopefully, yeah. So, signing off. This is The Ascended World, and with Angela Coulter. And
Sarah Sieg, Evagnoni.
see you next time. Thank you.